Welcome to the Rockabye Revenue Podcast with me, Abby Watson. I'm a mum of 4 and a business strategist, and I train people to become hypnobirthing teachers. In the last decade, I've built a thriving baby business that grew beyond my wildest dreams. This podcast is for you if you run a business or dream of running a business in the birth and baby industry. You want to change lives whilst making more money. I'm talking about creating sustainable income whilst being present for the people that matter most. I believe for our baby businesses to have the impact we desire, we must be rewarded. On this podcast, expect me to share actionable strategies without the jargon. I've been where you are. I've built a business while raising 4 little ones, and now I'm here to help you turn your passion into profit while creating the life you've always dreamed of. So let's get started. Hello, lovely one. How are you doing? Welcome to another episode of the Rockabye Revenue Podcast. Now, where I am right now, it is absolutely glorious weather here in West Yorkshire, and for the foreseeable on my phone, the weather app, it looks like it's staying, which is super exciting. And it's super exciting because since I've turned 40, I have officially adopted old person hobbies, it seems. And I'm really into gardening. The joy that I get from being outside, checking whether my seeds are growing, planting new plants, messing about in the soil. Oh my gosh, it has brought so much joy to my life. And honestly, I was the person that vowed to never be into gardening after being forced throughout my childhood to watch Gardener's World. My mum and dad are big gardeners, and that show nearly made me cry with boredom. So I never thought I would see the day, but here I am, age 40, into it. I'm really into it. But anyway, there's a reason I'm sharing this with you, and it's not to try and influence you to get into gardening. Unless you want to. And honestly, it has been so incredible for my mental health. Honestly, I feel like a new woman. It's made me get outside more. It's made me be more active. And like I said, the joy from the simplicity of seeing things grow. Magic. Anyway, like I said, I'm not here to make you turn into a gardener. But there is something that I have noticed about myself from getting into gardening that is so useful to think about when it comes to business too. So my dream for my garden is that it is going to be like cottage garden heaven, because ultimately I love a cottage garden, but also we live in the most gorgeous location, beautiful country views, so it's so fitting that it would be this gorgeous cottage garden. And when creating my dream cottage garden, I want the garden to be filled with hollyhocks. Now, if you're not a keen gardener, you might be thinking, what are you on about, Abby? Hollyhocks. Well, let me tell you this. Hollyhocks are the most beautiful flowers. They can grow up to like 8 foot. They are what you draw if you are thinking about a cottage garden. So I was like, right, I'm going to plant loads of hollyhocks. But then I realised that they do not flower the first year. They only flower the second year. So I was like, what? So I'd spend all this time planting them in my garden, and this summer, all I'm going to get is a bunch of leaves from them. No, thank you. So I thought, no way am I going to spend all that time doing that when actually I am not going to see the rewards until summer 2026. Over a year away. Why would I bother? And obviously, I resisted buying any. It really got me thinking about how I wasn't going to put any effort into something where I wasn't going to see reward immediately. If I wasn't going to see reward immediately, I wasn't going to bother. And isn't this so true of business too? So many of us can put loads of effort into things in our businesses that we are going to see a quick flurry, a quick sprouting of success, but actually ignore and not want to do the things that are actually going to see rewards much later. We want that instant gratification. We want that dopamine hit of seeing the results ASAP. And we become demotivated if we are not seeing success and results right away. And that is definitely my toxic trait. I am definitely a person that wants everything yesterday. You know, if I'm going to do something in the house, I am not willing to wait to get started next month. I want it right now. My goodness, I'm even a person that can't book holidays for next year because I'm like, oh, how can I think about next year? I want it now. I want it now, or I don't want it at all. And this is what I noticed with my gardening habits. And it has certainly been true in my business too. There have been times where I have put so much more time into things like creating a post on social media than creating an email sequence that I'm going to use again and again and again. Why is that? Well, if you put that thing out on social media, you're doing it right away, and potentially you are seeing some response immediately, you know? And yes, you might get a booking out of that. You might actually get a financial reward. But the problem with this desire that so many of us have to focus on the quick wins is that long term it's really unsustainable. Long term, it leads to burnout. Long term, it leads to our business only being a success when we're feeling high, full of life, super motivated. And as I've said on this podcast before, our motivation will absolutely go up and down based on how we're feeling in ourselves, our life circumstances, and so on. So I'm talking about this today because I want you to have a little think and think about, are you doing that in your baby business too? Are you mostly focusing on the things that are going to have an impact in your business in the next couple of months, rather than seeing the bigger picture of next year? Rather than seeing the bigger picture for this business to be sustainable for years to come. So how might that look in your business? Well, it might look like you throw in all your time that you've got to spend in your business into social media posts. It might see you throwing all your time into things that are going to give you immediate wins, like contacting past clients. Nothing wrong with these things, but if that's what we're only doing, we aren't thinking about the bigger picture. So we might be ignoring things that are going to be the things that long term have a big impact on our business. So that might be thinking about our branding, having a rebrand. It might be thinking about creating content in your business that are going to serve you for a long, long time. So for example, a podcast, creating a podcast, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and certainly less likely to get your clients in the here and now, but long term, it might have a huge impact. Collaborations, blogging, working on your website. All these things are unlikely to be quick wins, but long term are going to have this huger, bigger impact on your business. Now, when I think about me and my hollyhocks, why am I reluctant to do something right now that isn't going to flourish until beyond a year? Well, I guess it's not going to give me that dopamine hit, is it? And as well as that, there's this feeling of, with the hollyhocks, I'm not sure I'll want hollyhocks next year. Well, that's absolutely bonkers. Of course I blimmin' will. Of course I'll want hollyhocks next year. And when it comes to seeing those grow, I will be so grateful to the Abby of 2025 that did that work. And that is so much the same in terms of your business too. The person that you are next year will be so grateful to the you this year that did the things that are making them have a strong business in 2026. You know? And of course, these days in my business, I do think about the long term much more. And when I think about it, it really makes me realize that the reason that my business is so freedom-led is because of the work that I did years ago. So right now in my business, I honestly don't need to spend loads and loads of hours on it every single week. I don't. And there are weeks in my business that I may only spend a couple of hours on it. And that's really because of life circumstances. You know, as I've said many times before in this podcast, life has been hectic for me these last 18 months. And as a result, it's meant that my capacity and time on my business hasn't been as much, yet it continues to thrive and flourish and even grow. And that's because the years before, I did trust myself to work on things that have a bigger impact on my business. So I have very much rinse and repeat strategies. So, you know, 3 times a year, I do a special offer in my business. I reuse emails that I've perfected the several times before that I've done it, you know? I'm rinsing and repeating what has worked, and I'm so grateful to the Abby a couple of years ago that did those things for the first time. I do this podcast, you know, this podcast was created November 2024, and I knew very well that it wasn't going to be the thing that made people immediately say, let me train with you, Abby. They're not going to listen to one episode of my podcast and be like, I need to train to be a hypnobirthing teacher with Abby, are they? But actually, having this podcast here is a way of people getting to know me more and getting to understand that I do more than just train them to be a great hypnobirthing teacher. I help them build their business, and that I have got the know-how and the life experience to do that. You know, so it's the bigger picture. It's helping people trust me more. It is certainly not a quick win. It's long term. Okay. So in terms of me now, I have planted some hollyhocks. I have. I'll be showing you them. I will, but you're going to have to wait a year. Just think how beautiful my hollyhocks will be in 2006. So I want you to think about that right now. What can you do to think about the you next year? If you are in this for the long game, which I am sure you are, focusing all the time on quick wins is not going to get you there. Now, I am not saying there's not a time and place for quick wins. There definitely is. And there's a podcast episode on quick wins. It's one of the early ones. Do have a look. Quick wins absolutely have a time and a place. And I do utilise quick wins. The thing that you want to be aware of is you want a balance of both. You want to be utilising quick wins in your businesses, like following up, like good quality social media content, like asking for the sale, so directly asking people, I've got this course coming up, do you want a place? Yeah, those quick wins. But you also want to be ensuring that you are making time for the longer term things. Okay, so like we said, that might be focusing on blogging. That might be working on your website because you want it to have great searchability so people actually find you in Google, you know? It might be focusing on collaboration, offering yourself up for other podcasters, you know? These things that are not necessarily immediately having people saying, I want to come to your classes, I want to use your services. But longer term, my goodness, it's going to give your business so much more ease, and what you are creating, okay? What you are creating is really strong foundations. And that's what we want when we want a business that supports us, you know, that really works around our lives, not the other way around. So I hope you have found this useful today. Maybe it's even inspired you to grow some hollyhocks. I'm sure it hasn't. But anyway, I really hope it has helped you think about this mix of short-term wins, but also the longer-term things. Yes, we're not going to get that immediate gratification, that dopamine hit, but we've got to trust that the future us is going to be so grateful. You know? So I shall see you next time. Keep on changing lives, and I will talk to you soon. Take care. Bye. Thank you for listening to Rockabye Revenue. I hope this episode has left you with some fresh ideas and bundles of motivation. If you enjoyed this episode, do make sure you click subscribe so you never miss an installment. And if you found this episode useful, I'd love you forever if you leave a 5-star review, helping this podcast reach the ears of more of the helpers in this world. And remember, keep changing lives. See you next time.